Let's look now at issues around violent crimes and how police implement their crime-fighting strategies. I'm joined by Professor Jean Steyn, policing and criminal justice expert and head of the Department of Criminal Justice at the University of Zululand. A very good afternoon to you, Prof. Thank you so much for your time. I mean, a couple of hours ago, I was looking at how brazen another group of criminals approach a cash van. They planted, they took it off the road, planted bombs around it, then came with very big, posh, expensive cars to load the cash. And I was just amazed at just how brazen they were and how calmly they did all of this in front of a lot of people who are actually watching.
That's terrible. It's absolutely disastrous. It's like a television program or a movie that you're watching. A good afternoon for you, and good afternoon to, I can't see your panel members, but good afternoon to your audience too.
Is it because the criminals have become desperate and they are doing all of this without fearing consequences, or is it because they know that they won't be, or there'll be little, if any, consequences?
It's a very complex question. It relates to unemployment. It relates to equality. If you look at the statistics being reported in the country, annual reports, it speaks to organized crime. It speaks to crime perceptually paying, being people finding ways to survive and thrive within family contexts, normalizing criminal behavior, 46% unemployment rate below the age of 35. If you think about it, 9 out of 10 individuals incarcerated return to correctional facilities, and almost 14,000 Rand is paid by the taxpayer per month per incarcerated official, much higher than the basic income grant or income prescribed by government. So, to answer your question, some of them believe they will never get caught. Some of them feel that they will be treated better in a correctional facility than in the street being unemployed. So there are large challenges.
Now, irrespective, of the origins or the causes, our police and what they've put in place to fight the scourge, are they winning the battle? Are they being effective?
A very good question again. I think they're moving off a low base, starting to see improvements as of late. I think intelligence and task forces built on strategic plans are starting to work. There's a saying in human resources, those that work the hardest are the most in trouble. I think the science in KwaZulu-Natal and elsewhere is showing that things are starting to work. But then again, less than 3% of cases reported to the police are concluded in a court of law, never mind convictions. But then you've got to consider that most cases reported to the police are not crime related. They are conflict, problem solving related. But they all come through phone calls, being in the coalface of government for solutions. And it speaks to this integrated core families. And schools, not necessarily primary and secondary schools, assisting and supporting moral and ethical teaching at a young age. Parents have to leave rural communities to go and work in cities on contracts. A challenge that we have to address and speak to. They are moving in the right direction in terms of speciality and prosecutorially led investigations. If you consider the Directorate investigative directorate and task force units, but it's the baseline training of the average general specialist that requires emotional and adversarial intelligence that needs a lot of work. Policing is a profession. It is a skill. It's highly complex. One cannot assume that an average person without the adequate aptitude will make a great police officer. Most of these police officers are overburdened. And we think about more than 300 suicides in the last 5 years, never mind the average number of police officers killed in blue. No, it's a challenging job. It's not for everyone. And most of the time, cognitive dissonance between what is expected from the police and what they really do.
This morning, the Minister of Police was attending a lekgotla of the African National Congress, and he said there were three matters, he said, that dominated their discussions, and one of them was the murder rate in the country. And I'm going to read for you something that took me aback somewhat, where it says, South Africa is in a situation where one can ask whether the police are in control or the situation was now out of hand. An admission that law enforcement doesn't have a grip on the crime rate in South Africa. Our response was, the current situation is not out of control, nor is it under control. It's somewhere between the two, and that's our worry. I didn't know what to make of that.
No, they, with the crime rate, reporting rate that we have, it's astronomically high, but you've got to see a golden thread or a silver lining around it. We live in a democracy where people can report. And then again, certain crimes are less reported, lack of confidence. But if you look at the number of, for example, theft of motor vehicles that we have that are increasing, and number of vehicles that are insured in our country, it indicates that people are increasing their confidence in our security apparatus, the confidence coming into the system greater than before. But remember where we come from. A legitimate government, a suppressive government before. It's always a matter of trust between the police and the public. No, I don't differ. The police don't always blow their own trumpet, and the media doesn't always recognize the good that the police do. I think there's a lot more good going on than bad. But it's all for low base. It's all for low base. I think the political influence is still too great. The independence should advance towards a professional police service with a professional independent board. The Independent Police Investigative Directorate, even with the amendments to the Act now, should investigate more cases and hold the police accountable. And if you're really committed to holding the police accountable, 176 investigators are not enough. You've got to implement the recommendations made by it. And you've got to communicate that well, as what the National Development Plan envisions. A professional police service with a professional board of registration, as in the case with private policing, P0, by 2030.
What about smaller or petty crimes? And the reason I'm asking this, I mean, we were talking earlier, and there's another clip of some youngsters who last night went into a church while people were praying. They fired a few shots up in the air, and then everyone had to lie down. Then they took their monies, they took their phones, and this has become a very common crime, especially in the townships. And the point that someone was making to me earlier was that these were small, very young guys who are getting into this now, but they will soon graduate into bigger and more dangerous criminals of the type who will climb over counters at banks or do the cash in transit heists. And if no attention is being paid there, then you're basically making it a lot more rewarding for these youngsters, and they get more and more involved in bigger and bigger crimes as time goes by.
Very important point. Murderers started by stealing things, by lying, by hurting and harming others. Crime escalates. You get away with it. It becomes acceptable. There is no role models, appropriate role models, or appropriate or enough appropriate leaders in community to regulate ethical and moral behavior. Look at social media. It's absolutely disgusting what one sees going on in social media. Of course, I take it with a pinch of salt. But our young people are not being guided by community leaders enough, appropriately. Violence occurs at home. Social learning taking place. Curriculum at school speaking to conflict resolution appropriately, solving problems, taking accountability for one's actions, doing what is right, even if it hurts oneself, not lying, not deceiving, always speaking the truth. These are moral principles that we need to go back to and reinforce and acknowledge. Humility, supporting each other. But then again, people are hungry. People are thirsty and desperate. And in times of difficulty, people forget about what is morally correct. Burning down a church, I'm very saddened by that, or even robbing a church, harming children, women, the disabled, targets of disability, so-called disability without labeling. These are aspects that should tell us alarm bells are going off, that communities should be doing more within streets, within neighbors, within schools. We should be having engagements with each other, asking questions about ourselves. What do we stand for? What do we believe? Why are we here? Kids running around committing crime. No, crime is wrong. We must account for what we do. And where are our kids? What are we doing? Where's the parents? Where are the parents? So forth and so on. No, I don't condone it. I don't support it. I feel that it is disgusting and inappropriate. And I hope that not just the kids, but their parents are held accountable.
Prof, as you and many others have been saying, the war against crime is a war that police can't win on their own. Thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it. Professor Steyn, of course, from the Department of Criminal Justice at the University of Zululand. More on